Welcome to the News OK live discussion of the story Gina Mizell broke on News OK a couple hours ago. The Big 12 has apologized to Oklahoma State coach Mike Gundy for the botched call that in many, many ways decided Texas's 41-36 victory over Oklahoma State Saturday in Stillwater. Joining me to discuss this story, Gina Mizell, who broke the story on News OK. Hi, Gina. From Oklahoma City, her house, Jenni Carlson, columnist who covered the game. And from our other columnist, Barry Tramel, who was also at the game. Guys, let's just jump right in here. Gina, start with you. The Big 12 called Mike Gundy sometime in the last couple of days to apologize. Do we know anything about how Gundy received this apology?
No, we don't, because I got word of it today from a really good source. And unfortunately, tonight or for the rest of the week, because it's a bye week, there is no more media availability for Mike Gundy. So the only opportunity really to ask him about it would have been yesterday when they had post-practice availability. So no, we don't know how Mike Gundy has received it yet, but he explained on Sunday and Monday that he figured that the Big 12 would at least offer an explanation of the call and the play and all of that, and sounds like he got a lot more than that. So it'll be interesting to see maybe next week when we get to talk to him again how he responded to it.
Okay, the call we're talking about, of course, is Joe Bergeron's touchdown, the last touchdown of a 41-36 Texas victory. The replay showed that Bergeron lost the ball before he crossed the goal line. It showed later that Daquan Lowe, Oklahoma State safety, picked it up, showed it to officials. However, when it was reviewed upstairs, they stayed with the original call. Why, Gina?
Based on people that we've talked to, or even just listening to the broadcast on Fox, that there's an issue that when the ball goes into a scrum or a big pile, that the ball would have needed to be recovered by Oklahoma State before that. That's what Mike Perea, the officiating expert on Fox, said. That's what a Big 12 officiating source, told us on Sunday. And so that seemed to be why the replay was upheld. But I mean, what's really in question here is the original call on the field, which is, like you said, that the ball did appear to come loose before he crossed the goal line. And that's what the Big 12 told Mike Gundy, that it did come loose before the ball crossed the goal line.
Quoting from your story on News OK that you broke a couple hours ago, Walt Anderson, the head of officials for Big 12, apologized profusely to Gundy and telling him that Bergeron did indeed fumble before he crossed the goal line, that the call on the field was incorrect. The botched call was by head linesman Brad Edwards, who signaled touchdown too soon, apparently. He was on the opposite side of the field from the place where Bergeron lost the ball, apparently, and never saw the two. Barry, let's go to you first. Was there any way that they could have got this right on the field?
Well, I mean, yeah, if he doesn't run in there and throw his hands up, make sure that Bergeron's got the ball. You see this a lot, though. I mean, you see guys make calls a little prematurely on the goal line. The one thing I went back and watched the replay today, and what fascinating to me is Brad Edwards didn't make the call immediately. He ran in almost all the way, and then put his hands up. So I think technique-wise, he did what he was supposed to do, except see the ball there at the end.
One thing you see a lot with these calls, especially in the NFL, it seems to me the two linesmen check with each other. They're coming from opposite ends. That didn't happen either. Jenni, where were you?
And I'll tell you another thing. In plays like this, you need help from the umpire too, because he's right in the middle. The umpire didn't do anything. The umpire's right in the middle of it, and he never calls a touchdown, but he does what you say, which is talk to other guys and tell them what he saw.
Isn't that a common officiating mistake? Isn't that sort of the mistake that happened in the thing that settled the NFL referees lockout, the disaster in the Seattle-Green Bay game? That was an error of no conversation. The white hat never came in and really talked to the two officials making the call and sort of reconciled the call between them. Is that?
Oh, probably so. Now, I think what happened here is I'm not sure anybody on the field, except maybe Daquan Lowe and Joe Bergeron, knew there was anything going on.
Yeah.
So I don't know that any official thought there was any reason to talk.
Guys, let's go to the subject of what good is an apology. Jenni, you're going to write on this topic tomorrow for the Oklahoman News OK. How, if you're an Oklahoma State fan, player, coach, how do you feel about Walt Anderson's apology?
Well, I mean, it's nice and all to get an apology. I mean, aren't we always told that we're supposed to say we're sorry when we hurt somebody? I mean, I think in this case, Oklahoma State was definitely hurt, and the Big 12 apologized, and that's nice, but it doesn't change the outcome of that game, and that's unfortunate. Oklahoma State, that would have been a huge win for them. Obviously the questions coming from the Arizona game, how would Oklahoma State play, and obviously it changes the whole dynamic of the narrative that we were on that night and continue to be. What we think of Oklahoma State, what we think of Texas, obviously if that game outcome has changed. But at the same time, I don't think there's any way that they could overturn this, that there would be any sort of retroactive ruling that Oklahoma State wins. And I don't think they should. So while it may feel awful right now for Oklahoma State fans, players, coaches, everything to hear about this, I don't think you can change it. You don't want to open that can of worms.
We got some comments coming from readers on the live chat right now as part of this News OK Live event. If you joined us in progress, we're talking about the Big 12's apology to Oklahoma State for a botched call that basically decided Oklahoma State's 41-36 loss to Texas. I'll read it. Apology means nothing to the win column. Fumble, yes. The officials should have taken as much time as needed to make sure they got it right. Since the entire game came down to this one, critical, absolute call. Barry, do you think they took enough time to make this call? Was that the problem? They didn't take enough time.
No, when you make what call we talking about?
Did the officials take the time?
The linesman or in the replay booth?
Well, either one. Did they? Well, let's start on the field. Clearly, they didn't take the time on the field to make the call. That's probably the critical error.
It was basically a premature whistle. It's the same effect as a premature whistle. They give whether you make it at the 50-yard line or on the goal line. If you blow a guy down before he's down at midfield, it's the same effect as if you raise your hands on the goal line and say touchdown. So whether it's a matter of taking enough time, I don't know. I mean, it sounds like the guy just erred in making sure that Bergeron had the ball. Whether that was not enough time or too much time or whatever case, he just didn't make sure that where the ball was. One of the tenets of officiating is see the ball. So I think that's where the malfeasance was. Now, when you get to the replay booth, what Gina said is correct. The replay officials had no choice. It's by rule. You can't overturn a premature whistle unless the fumble goes directly into the possession of a defender. So I think the replay probably was handled correctly. It was a totally on the field issue.
Joining us from Edmond and his home is our other OSU beat writer, John Helsley. John, thanks for stepping in. I'll just have you react to this comment from a reader, which says, let me add that this is classy on the part of both the Big 12 head of officials and on the OSU coaching staff to take the proper action, gutsy to apologize, classy for Gundy not to second guess the call. After the game, has this been well handled, John?
I think it has been well handled. After the game, of course, Mike didn't know a lot about even what had transpired on the field. He was listening to Daquan Lowe tell him what happened, but he didn't see it. And I'm not sure a lot of other people on the field saw it. And then Mike had an opportunity yesterday after practice. If he would have liked to have blasted away, he could have done that, and he chose not to. And I think by then he'd probably already had that conversation with Walt Anderson of the Big 12.
John, do you think his reaction would have been different in the heat of the moment had he known then what we know now?
Sure would have been interesting. Mike was quite keyed up after the game as he spoke to us and kind of gave his initial opening statement. he was, you could tell he was trying to hold back some emotions. And at that point, like I said, he didn't know exactly what had transpired down there on the goal line. If he'd have known, it would have been interesting to see if he could have indeed kind of held his emotions in check.
For those who saw the press conference after the game, for those who didn't, Gundy had a sports drink of some sort, and he was gargling with it, swishing it, guzzling it. He was really rinsing out his mouth and getting ready to carefully choose his words. It was a tough situation, but it's also, guys, and I'd like to talk to John and Barry specifically about this, how difficult it is to cover this kind of story when you don't have a very good view. Here in the office, we saw the replay, we saw the fumble come out, but when I called you guys and sort of had some conversation, some of you weren't even in the press box anymore. You were at places where you couldn't see it. Barry, you go first. Talk about how hard it is to deal with these issues from a reporting standpoint when you're at the stadium.
Well, it's like you said, sometimes you're on the field, don't even know what happened. Me and Helsley were in Eugene, Oregon during the Oregon-Oklahoma fiasco, and we were on the field when all that nonsense. We were like the Pac-12 officials. We had no idea what was going on. So, but now that taught me a lesson. I no longer ever leave the press box before the game's over, unless it's 52-0 or something. But I was in the press box till the end Saturday night, and I could see they were talking. I mean, I could see that something was going on, but I didn't. I couldn't hear the broadcast, so I really just thought it was just typical end of the play stuff where somebody's grabbing at the ball. Until you called, I didn't even know there was a question. And even after you called, I didn't know, and to some degree you didn't know either how paramount of a call that was. And heck, it seems like every day we learn more and more. Saturday night, we thought, that might be something. And Sunday, we thought, well, it could be something. And then today, we find out there was something. It was the wrong call. So it's not the least bit easy. It's not like football is not like baseball, where it's safer out, ball or strike, fair or foul. A blind man could see that Don Denkinger screwed up the 1985 World Series, but nobody at Boone Pickens Stadium, or even people at home, or even people sitting in the Big 12 office on Sunday grading film could see easily what happened. I think they went over this play, view after view after view down in Irving before making this decision to call Mike Gundy and apologize.
The technology advances, the way this is all covered, the way people at home can see it now. John, I'd like to go to you talking about that game in Oregon. And I remember trying to get a hold of you guys. First of all, cell phone reception stunk. I think by the time I got a hold of you, you were pinned up against the side of the stands by the Oregon students rushing the field. I was telling Barry this is a big deal, and Barry didn't quite see it, and Bob Stoops didn't see it either. In fact, he made passing reference to the onside kick call. Meanwhile, a guy in Edmond is calling me on deadline, sending me an email with a link to a YouTube video showing Alan Patrick holding up the ball walking off. It's kind of a helpless feeling in a way trying to cover these things in those conditions. What else do you...
We didn't even know what YouTube was that day.
I think that's the day I discovered YouTube, in fact. I do indeed. John, but did I describe your situation in Eugene that day correctly?
Exactly. And as Barry said, we were on the field that day. The onside kick occurred. Nobody down there knew it. I think Alan Patrick was the only one on the field who really knew that he had the ball and that it had indeed just kind of skirted through the line, the scrum there into his hands, similar to the other night. Daquan Lowe seemed to be the only guy really on the field who knew that he had the ball and the ball had not been dead. And like you said, afterward, we're talking to Bob Stoops about it, basically only on the information that you had provided to us. Bob didn't know. Bob didn't see it. It was only until afterward that this thing kind of blew up and, made a national name out of Gordon Reese.
One more word about our coverage of that. We brainstorm headlines, we share, we post on Twitter and Facebook, and we ask readers to submit their headlines, and sometimes we used them. And one of the headlines that came back for this game was hooked or crooked. And Barry, I shared that with you, and you hated it. You absolutely hated the headline. I liked it, and I thought it was right on the edge of the thing. But when the stories came back, there wasn't a story that we wrote that really supported any kind of controversy, any kind of, and today, I think we come down on the side of crooked.
Well, I mean, yeah, today would be a good day to use that headline. Trot it out there.
Glad we saved it. Guys, can you ever foresee a day, and we'll start with Gina, when the review of these things go from apology to action? Can you ever foresee a day when we're sitting here talking about the Big 12 overturning an outcome in a game like this?
Man, I mean, I think it would be difficult because you just don't know. Let's say that in that type of a circumstance that, Oklahoma State gets the ball, 1st and 10 on the 2-yard line or whatever. I mean, you'd think that they'd win the game, but what if something ridiculous happens? What if, Texas goes Greg Schiano on Oklahoma State and forces a fumble or something like that, and then they win the game anyway. I mean, you just can't predict what's going to happen. So, I guess unless it was on the very last play of the game, if it was something like the Seahawks-Packers call where, you say it's an interception versus a touchdown, I don't see how you could do that just because you can't predict the future. You don't know what's going to happen in a game. We think we know what was going to happen, but you don't know for sure. So I think that it's kind of in a spot where, the official needs to get the field or get the call on the field correct. But at the same time, mistakes are going to happen. And this is just one that was, really paramount and appears to have cost Oklahoma State the game. But yeah, I don't see it going in that direction just because you can't predict the future and can't really know what's going to happen.
You're watching the News OK live discussion of the Big 12's apology to Oklahoma State for a botched call in the Cowboys' 41-36 loss to Texas Saturday night in Stillwater. And Jenni, what change could be made to avoid this kind of thing? Is there some sort of rule change, some sort of way they look at replay that can fix it Saturday night?
I mean, I think unless you're talking about technology that we may not even have, camera in the ball or something like that. I mean, I had somebody send me a picture via Twitter of the fumble, and they had highlighted the spot where the fumble or where the ball was supposed to be. And I've looked at it and I've looked at it, and I still have a hard time on this picture with it spotlighted, still seeing the ball. I mean, you're talking about, somebody that's taken that sliver of a nanosecond in time, frozen it, highlighted it, and you still have trouble. And I don't know if there's anything you can do. I'm the daughter of a basketball official, a guy that spent a lot of years of his life going out and refereeing high school basketball games. And, I think football is a lot more difficult because you're talking about, as Barry said so often, shades of gray, and it's not ball versus strike or out versus safe. But this is tough stuff. I mean, there's just no way around it. And I think they talked pretty substantially on the field and in the replay, and they felt like it was a touchdown. I truly believe that. I don't think that those officials thought that anything had been amiss. And, it's unfortunate, but I'm not really sure there's a whole lot you can do within the structure of the rules to change that.
Let's end on this question. Where does this leave the Oklahoma State Cowboys, a team that was coming in trying to contend and try to defend its Big 12 championship with a freshman quarterback, a true freshman quarterback who has been injured, and they've lost him. The margin of error for the Cowboys certainly is smaller, and then they go and beat Texas on their home field, but it doesn't count. John, where does this leave the Cowboys, and does this give them something to build on, or will this be something they look back and lament when the season's over?
Well, I think it's going to take time to really find that out. If they had won that game the other night, I think it would have been a huge boost for them going forward. As we look at this conference this season, the parity that runs throughout for the most part, with the exception of maybe Kansas, I think we're going to see a lot of toss-up games Saturday after Saturday. So they're going to have to go win a good share of toss-up games to recover from this opening Big 12 loss and keep themselves, in the conversation.
Barry, is it in any way galling that it's Texas? I mean, Nebraska's gone, and so they won't be around to rail against this and join in the chorus. But it's another Big 12 call that goes for Texas.
Well, I mean, the one in Arlington 2 years ago or 3 years ago was correct. I mean, this one wasn't. So, I mean, if you're asking anybody outside of Austin if it's galling that it's Texas, the answer is yes. But, it galls a lot of people when the OU or Texas or any of the traditional favorites, Alabama, whoever, get something. So I don't think this was, there's an internet rumor going around that Randy Crystal made the call, who's a longtime Big 12 official who lives in Austin, Texas. Well, he might have made the call, except he wasn't in the building that night. He wasn't even part of the crew. So you get a lot of wives' tales and things going on, but it's just a case of, what can be done about it? Well, I mean, we've made great improvements on officiating. We've gone to replay. We've hired men like Walt Anderson, who's an excellent NFL referee to oversee Big 12 officiating. We've gone to extensive judging and critiquing of games on Sunday at the Big 12 office. They review the officials' actions and grade them. We've even gone to the apology route. 5 years ago, I don't think you'd have gotten an apology from the Big 12. 10 years ago, I know you wouldn't have. So, I mean, I think officiating has gotten much better, and I think it's pretty good, and it's not perfect, and I don't know that it will ever be. I do think this can be a good thing that OSU can build on, though, because we've gone from, and me included, everybody saying, your defense stinks. Well, turns out OSU did stop them on that last drive. So that's something these guys can build upon, and in their heart of hearts can say, you know what, Alex Elkins did pop that ball out of that guy's hands, and Dayton Lowe recovered it. And, if life was fair, we would have got a stop and we would have got a victory.
Well, and here's the truth, guys. Remember, in this Big 12 race, the way things are going right now, one loss is not a be-all, end-all. I mean, Gina, I think you've said this in a couple different spots. 2-loss team wouldn't be that far out of the question. So I think, one loss, it's definitely galling, it's definitely hurtful, but it's not the end of Oklahoma State's chances to potentially win this Big 12. The way things are going right now, it seems like everything's still up in the air.
Gina, the last word is yours. Should the Cowboys feel better or worse today?
Well, I mean, you obviously don't feel good that the game didn't go your way when it probably should have. But I think what Barry said about turns out that you did stop them on that fourth down play. And we asked Mike Gundy about this on Sunday, which was when he kind of first came out and said that he believed the call was a fumble after reviewing the game film from a few different angles. But I asked him, I'm like, is this something that you have to address with the team to help them, get over it essentially before the next game? And he said that at that point, no one had said anything about it. So this was, Sunday night when they had come in for their meetings and their, workout and all that kind of thing. So, I mean, it's like if they weren't, dwelling on it on Sunday, like in less than 24 hours after it happened, then I think by today they're all right. And I'm sure, obviously this story is spread and they've caught wind of it, and maybe they'll be like, man, that stinks that, it didn't go our way. But you can't change it. Yes, the apology is nice, but it doesn't change anything. And I think, like Jenni said, this is going to be such a wild Big 12 race that, one loss isn't the be-all, end-all. And but it's going to be difficult because, like John said, so many of these games are toss-ups. So, this team's going to have to rally and is going to have to play well to continue to contend in the Big 12.
Need to win your home games too, guys.
Oh, yeah, no question.
This was one of them that they got away. Guys, thanks for John Helsley, Gina Mizell, Jenni Carlson, and Barry Tramel. That's all for this News OK Live event. But you can stay with the best coverage team every day at News OK and every morning in the Oklahoman.